We mentioned this on the show yesterday. This is an article in the Washington Post that was published on Monday, but started making the rounds online in a big way yesterday afternoon, just before our live stream. So the article is kind of benignly titled, How Biden Became Embroiled in a Gaza Conflict with No End in Sight. Sounds like generic, oh, we need to spill some ink to get the paper out tomorrow, have somebody write this or that. But actually, no. Actually, this is a pretty damning article. On October 27th, 3 weeks into Israel's punishing counterattack in Gaza, top Biden officials privately told a small group assembled at the White House what they would not say in public. Israel was regularly bombing buildings without solid intelligence that they were legitimate military targets. The group, top foreign policy officials from the Biden administration and previous ones, also discussed the apparent lack of an Israeli plan for defeating Hamas despite repeated U.S. prodding, according to 3 people familiar with the meeting who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss a private exchange. So this article actually deals with revelations based on testimony from insiders about how Biden and his inner circle knew that Israel was playing fast and loose with the information that they said was reliable, that they were only bombing military targets. And they were telling the public an entirely different story. Quote, we never had a clear sense that the Israelis had a definable and achievable military objective, said one of those familiar with the meeting. From the very beginning, there's been a sense of us not knowing how the Israelis were going to do what they said they were going to do. Maybe that's because they never intended on doing what they said they were going to do. Maybe this was never about defeating Hamas and more about clearing the area. It goes on. Publicly, however, the Biden administration was providing Israel unfettered support in the wake of the October 7th attacks when Hamas militants murdered 1,200 people and took about 250 others hostage. On the same day as the private meeting, White House spokesman John Kirby told reporters that the U.S. was imposing no red lines on Israel's military campaign. The previously unreported meeting shows that discrepancies were emerging far earlier than publicly known between the Biden team's internal doubts about Israel's conduct and its ironclad external support. At nearly every turn, President Biden and his aides defended the Jewish state, even as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defied the U.S. on everything from protecting civilians to allowing aid delivery to accepting a Palestinian state. Biden's strategy from the outset rested on a central trade-off that if he showed Israel unequivocal, even defiant support early on, he could ultimately influence its conduct of the war. One more time. What a line that is, huh? Some administration officials now concede the strategy is headed toward failure, and in private talks, they voice a striking frustration and uncertainty about how the war will end. On Monday, Biden's frustration appeared to boil over as he told Netanyahu in a phone call, that's this Monday, that it would be disastrous for Israel to surge into Rafah and demanded that Israel send a team to Washington to consult on a better strategy. Yeah, I'm sure that went really well. So the article goes on to list some examples of how the Biden team lied, just flat out lied in order to provide cover for Netanyahu and for the IDF in the hopes that it would win them points later on. In early November, Israel bombed the densely packed Jabalia refugee camp several times, saying it had eliminated a senior Hamas commander, Ibrahim Biari, but dozens of civilians were also killed. Quote, that was the first time that everybody was focusing on the size of the bombs Israel was dropping and how little they seemed to care, one White House ally said, speaking on the condition of anonymity to describe internal deliberations. In early November, Israel began warning that Al-Shifa Hospital Gaza's largest, where thousands of civilians were sheltering, was being used by Hamas as a major command center. That prompted a vigorous debate among Biden officials over whether to publicly support Israel's claim, according to 3 senior administration officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity, once again, to disclose internal discussions. Some worried that Israel would see such a statement as a green light to raid the hospital, while others wanted to use the information to show the public how Hamas embedded itself among civilians to underline the complexities Israel faced. On November 14th, the White House decided to publicly back Israel on the matter. We have information that confirms that Hamas is using that particular hospital for a command and control mode, Kirby told reporters about aboard Air Force One, citing declassified intelligence, quote, "That is a war crime." Well, this is obviously a lie.
Yes.
Obviously. And the Washington Post, this very same paper, published a fully documented report saying that there was no evidence of active Hamas tunnels under al-Shifa. And we know now that they had real doubts about it, but they decided to go out and say, yes, we have information which says beyond a reasonable doubt that, yes, what Israel is saying about al-Shifa is true, even though they did not know that. They obviously did not know that.
Well, this is why at this point, and it's not like it was the first time. You have, going back to at least the Lusitania, a history of the United States making claims in order to justify war, obviously the Gulf of Tonkin. But the weapons of mass destruction was a major turning point in the United States, saying we have intelligence that proves meaning anything to anybody.
Right.
I remember even I was very skeptical about the weapons of mass destruction. And when they sent out Colin Powell to do that whole thing, this is honestly what I thought. Watching it, I thought they were really stretching the evidence to make their case. But I thought they're probably going on the assumption, what are the odds there's really nothing there?
Right.
So we're going to just make the case and we'll find it.
Right.
It'll be fine. We'll go in, we'll find it, and then it'll all be fine. But they didn't. Right. Who really thought, I mean, even myself, I thought the case they were making was bullshit, but I thought they'll probably find something anyway, and then they can just justify it retroactively. That, I think, was a major turning point, especially because of the way they pimped out Colin Powell, the way they used his credibility to sell that war. At that point, they've never really been able to stand in front of the world and get instant acquiescence in that way again. Right. That was what they sacrificed to get their Iraq war. Like the idea that American intelligence, and frankly, if you dig into the history, American intelligence was always bad. During the Cold War, the USSR was always much better at espionage and intelligence gathering than the United States was, because we're an isolated country. We have a population of ignorant people. We don't create the kind of people who make good spies and good experts in international affairs. Something like this, nobody is going to believe the United States anymore, and it seems like it's only gotten worse. Like the United States goes up and says our intelligence, who believes that? It's almost a counterfactual. It almost suggests that probably the opposite is true now.
Yeah. No, indeed. Kirby added that the White House did not want to see a firefight in the hospital where innocent people, helpless people, sick people are simply trying to get the medical care that they deserve. Hours later, the IDF began its raid of al-Shifa, drawing condemnation from the World Health Organization and human rights groups. The hospital's operations collapsed, resulting in the death of at least 40 patients, including 4 premature babies, according to the United Nations. Senator Van Hollen, who has received a classified briefing about U.S. intelligence on al-Shifa, said there were important and subtle differences between what Biden officials were saying publicly and what the intelligence actually showed. I did find there to be some disconnect between the administration's public statements and the classified findings, the senator said. So once again, right there in ink, in one of the papers of record, that the Biden team knowingly lied to make it sound like Israel was far more credible than even the Biden team thought that they were. This while hospitals are being raided, power is being cut to healthcare centers, refugee camps are being leveled. Now you have a hunger crisis in a place where there's no healthcare centers, right? I mean, the famine is a huge enough problem. Add to that the fact that almost 200 healthcare buildings, not just the major hospitals, almost 200 healthcare centers, doctors' offices, have been obliterated. And now you have it in the Washington Post that 3 weeks into it, Biden's team was already saying, wait a minute, this is 50-50 at best that Israel is being honest about who they're targeting. But we're going to go out there and we're going to tell the microphones with absolute certainty, we know that they are telling the truth. We are backing them. We have it on good intelligence that, yes, Al-Shifa is a Hamas command center when they knew no such thing. Look at the consequences of that. I mean, that's a pretty damning piece.
Well, you remember how there was all of this debate. This is how they've just normalized atrocity, by just overloading the public with it until it's almost a matter of which atrocity do you report on. Remember all of this back and forth about whether they had targeted the hospital? Now they've hit all the hospitals.
Right.
Was that all an accident? That was all, it was all errant rockets.
Yeah.
They've targeted all the hospitals. All the universities have been hit. That's genocide. That's genocide. You're clearly trying to make this place unlivable for these people.
100%.
Please clap.